I stepped outside, hungry, famished. I wanted something fresh, something rubbery, filled with blood, something I could really sink my teeth into. My eyes weren't responding the way they used to. Ever since I died, things took longer for my body to adjust to. So, when I got outside, everything was just white. For a few seconds, all I could hear was yelling and loud noises. I could hear fire and stomping feet. Finally, my eyes focused, and I could see that all around me was just pure chaos. So many meals running every which way. Mrs. Ferguson looked delicious. She was just kneeling in her front lawn, holding her dead, uninteresting kid. So since she was the first real appetizing thing I saw, I made my way towards her, ignoring everything else around me. I was walking differently. I felt stiff. It had been a few days since I had eaten, and I had thrown up the waste that morning. My stomach was hungry, and the parasite needed protein to send control signals to my brain, keep my energy up, or I would start to rot. Mrs. Ferguson screamed as I hobbled towards her. I remember seeing a look in her eyes like it was all over. She closed her eyes, and she began to pray, clinging on to the limp body of her daughter as I got closer and closer and closer. And then two things happened. A tight feeling around my neck, something thin and metal closing in around it. I tried to turn around to see who it was, maybe catch a taste in the process, but they kept behind me, tightening the cord, taking physical control of my body. And as I turned back to Mrs. Ferguson, I caught a quick glimpse of her lying on her back, with her kid gnawing away at her plump, delicious-looking neck rolls. My captor took control and inched me past my mailbox into the street, where I caught a good look at the neighborhood. A few crashed cars, dead bodies everywhere, and Resurrected, like me, walking around. I saw Steve Thompson from math class, like a mirror of myself. An animal control officer had him in one of those hoops on a stick that they use for dangerous pit bulls and wild dogs. Must have been what was on me as well. So my captor led me to a police riot squad van, like you see in the gang movies, the paddy wagon, where they cuffed my hands behind my back and gagged me with a zip tie and shoved me in with 10 others just like me. I have no idea how long the ride was. You see, my brain stopped keeping track of time as the insanity around me grew. All I remember was that all of us in the back were standing the entire ride, hunched over from the low ceiling of the van. And I remember bleeding from the corners of my mouth. Not because it hurt. I stopped feeling pain the moment the parasite killed me. But because I kept tasting the fresh blood and getting confused like there was a fresh meal somewhere right next to me. Eventually we got to the prison, where they kept all of us. Upon entry, they sedated us. They tattooed the address of where they found us on our arms, stripped off all of our clothes, hosed us down, and brought us to our cell. They must have been collecting us for weeks because the place was full of Resurrected. I was in a cell with 5 other men, all stripped naked, all standing around endlessly waiting for food. One of them started to rot around the second day. His skin lost color and started to sag. His ankles and wrists pooled with liquid. A few officers and some men in lab coats took him away. We never saw him again. They did feed us from time to time. Raw, fresh meat in buckets. Must have been cow. Just crudely chopped up legs and thighs and random mysterious bloody meat. It was fine, but not the same as when it still had new oxygen in his blood. Not like stripping it from its epidermal package and eating it fresh. I'd say about a few weeks went by. We were never let out. Our black solid vomit was collected at the end of each day, and in the meantime we stood with it. The only exciting moments were when the guards came around for feeding or cleaning, because there was just a little chance that we might catch one of them and have a real meal. After what seemed like forever, the cells seemed to be emptying. The herd was thinning out. I was moved to my own cell where I didn't have to knock around with naked men all day. I was there for a while, standing, eating, puking, until one day the men in the lab coats came for me, cuffed me and zip-tied me and took me to a sterile-looking room, and they strapped me to a table, and they took blood, and then they attached an IV, which I watched until my eyes faded to black, and I died again. But this time there was no room for floaty exploration. Death, this time, was like a hot fever. My brain was boiling. I was in pain for the first time in who knows how long. As each part of my body reawakened, I could feel the damage that had been polluting my blood. I was there in the makeshift hospital for a long time. Long enough to make a full recovery. Oh, almost. The tendons in my ankles and knees had taken serious damage, so I will hobble for the rest of my life. But small price to pay for having your life back, right? They found a cure. They killed the parasite, brought me back to life, and don't get me wrong, I'm very, very thankful. I just wish they could do something about these awful memories.